The hardest blow isn't the one that shakes your body, it's the one that shatters your mind when you least expect it. My friends, let that sink in. People think they're ready for pain. They imagine the fight, the heated argument, the breakup message, the slammed door echoing in the night. But the truth, the real damage, the kind that sneaks up and cuts deeper than words, isn't loud at all. It doesn't come with fireworks or drama. It comes quietly, silently, when someone you thought you controlled simply disappears. No warning, no goodbye, just absence. And that absence, that's the blow no one prepares for. So before we dive deep, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. Trust me, you're going to want to stay on this journey with me. Because what we're about to uncover is not just relationship advice, it's a survival manual for your peace, your dignity, and your emotional power. Stay with me. Now, hey folks, imagine this for a second. You're in a boxing ring. Your opponent is cocky, taunting, waiting for the bell. They're dancing around, expecting punches, ready to block, ready to dodge. But instead of swinging, you step out of the ring. You don't fight at all. You leave them throwing punches at the air. That's silence. That's absence. It's the invisible punch, the one they never saw coming, and it lands harder than any physical hit. Why? Because it doesn't bruise the skin. It bruises the ego. Here's the lie most people live under. They think the loud ending is the real ending. They believe confrontation gives closure, that words heal wounds, that explanations settle debts. But here's the truth, my friends. Words rarely change people. Noise rarely heals anything. The blow that truly breaks them isn't the fight. It's when the fight never comes. It's when the door doesn't slam, it just closes. It's when the phone doesn't buzz, it just stays silent. It's when you stop showing up, stop justifying, stop being predictable. That is when everything they relied on collapses. As the old saying goes, sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. And folks, that's not just a clever line, it's a weapon. Silence is a verdict. It's a mirror. It forces the other person to look at themselves without your voice cushioning their guilt, without your presence holding up their illusion. And here's where it gets powerful. The one who always thought you'd return, the one who believed they had unlimited access to you, suddenly finds the door locked. Not with rage, but with elegance. Not with revenge, but with dignity. You see, absence flips the script. While they're still preparing to manipulate, you've already walked away. While they're sure they've got another chance, you've already made your final decision. And that realization, it doesn't come like thunder. It creeps in slowly. It gnaws at them when they least expect it. At night, in silence, when there's no distraction left, their mind replays the moment they lost you. And because there was no final scene, no official ending, they keep chasing ghosts. That's the blow. That's the lesson. That's the sentence. Let's be honest, sometimes folks think they're untouchable. They take your patience for weakness. They believe your devotion is endless. But what they don't know is that your silence is already loading like a slingshot pulled back tight. And when it snaps, it doesn't need noise to break their illusion. It just needs your absence. Revenge isn't always loud. It's sometimes just moving on. Remember that. So if you've ever been underestimated, ghosted, replaced, or taken for granted, you're in the right place. Because today we're not just talking about silence. We're talking about how to turn silence into strategy, absence into power, detachment into freedom. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand why the hardest blow isn't the one you prepare for. It's the one that arrives quietly, calmly, like a shadow in the night. And when it hits, it leaves no room for return. My friends, this is your reminder. Your silence is not weakness. It's strength. It's dignity. It's evolution. So take a second right now and declare it in the comments. I am powerful. Just 3 words, because that's exactly what you are. And if you feel that power rising in you, if you're ready to step into that stoic calm that shakes the world around you, then press the like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because this journey isn't about revenge, it's about rising, it's about reclaiming, and it starts with you. Number 1, they and the invisible strike. Not every wound comes from a sword. Some of the deepest cuts come from silence. Let that line echo in your mind for a moment, my friends. Because people prepare themselves for noise. They brace for the slam of the door, the sting of words, the weight of accusations. But what they never prepare for is silence. Silence is invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't warn you it's coming. And yet, when it arrives, it leaves a scar no words could ever match. Think about it like this. Imagine a storm. You see the clouds forming, the sky darkening, the lightning flashing. You brace yourself for the thunder, for the rain, for the chaos. But instead, nothing happens. The storm never comes. It just hovers, unsettled, waiting. That silence in the air, that's more frightening than the storm itself, because your mind fills the emptiness with fear. That's exactly how silence works in relationships, folks. They don't fear the fight. They fear the moment they realize the fight will never come. And here's the truth no one likes to admit. They expect you to show up. They expect your messages, your explanations, your tears, your attempts to prove your worth. They rehearse their arrogance like an actor rehearses a script, ready to dismiss your pain with one careless line. But what happens when you don't play your role? What happens when the actor steps onto the stage and realizes the audience is gone? That's the invisible strike. That's the blow they never saw coming. They'll ask themselves questions, but they won't dare say them out loud. Did I lose them? Are they really not coming back? Did I push too far? The fear creeps in slowly. At first, they'll pretend they don't care. They'll act confident, like your absence doesn't touch them. But late at night, when it's just them and their thoughts, the silence becomes unbearable. Because silence has a way of stripping away illusions. Without your voice filling the space, they hear their own echo. And my friends, that echo is louder than anything you could have shouted. But here's where we need to break the lie they believed, and maybe even the lie you believed. People think confrontation is strength. They think closure comes from speaking your truth, from laying everything out in one final argument. They tell you, say how you feel, don't leave things unsaid. But let's be real, how many times have you spoken your truth only to be dismissed? How many times have you tried to explain only for your words to be twisted back at you? Confrontation gives them fuel. It keeps the game alive. But silence ends the game. As Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. And silence is exactly that. It's not lowering yourself to their level. It's not begging them to hear you. It's showing them you've already left the battlefield. While they're still sharpening their weapons, you've already walked away. And walking away without noise, that's not weakness, that's mastery. Now let me ask you this, folks. Why is silence so difficult for most people? Why is walking away without explanation so terrifying? Because deep down, we're afraid of not being understood. We want them to know why they hurt us. We want them to admit they were wrong. We want closure wrapped in words. But here's the hard truth. Most people who hurt you don't want to understand. They don't want to take responsibility, and the more you explain, the more they control. Silence is terrifying, yes, but it's also the only thing that finally breaks that cycle. It won't be easy. Your mind will scream, send that message, tell them what they did, make them see your worth. But my friends, your worth doesn't need to be announced, it needs to be lived. And the moment you realize that, the moment you decide your peace is worth more than their attention, That's the moment silence transforms from emptiness into strength. Think of silence like a mirror. When you speak, you give them something to push against, to deny, to manipulate. But when you go silent, the only reflection they see is themselves. And for someone used to control, that reflection is unbearable. They can't argue with it. They can't twist it. They can't escape it. Silence holds up the mirror and says, "This is what you created. Now live with it." And trust me, that mirror cuts deeper than any words ever could. This is where fear turns into power, because while they're stumbling in confusion, you're reclaiming yourself. Every day you remain silent. Every day you resist the urge to break the absence. You're training your mind. You're proving to yourself that you don't need them to validate your pain. You're learning to stand in your own calm, your own stillness, your own dignity. And that, my friends, is how you flip the script. That's how you go from being the one begging for answers to the one holding all the power. So when the questions start rising, when you find yourself wondering, what if they forget me? What if they move on? Remember this, their moving on doesn't erase your worth. Their forgetting doesn't erase your impact. In fact, the silence you've left behind becomes unforgettable, because absence speaks in a way presence never could. And while they try to fill the void you left, they'll realize no distraction, no replacement, no excuse can erase the quiet power of someone who chose dignity over drama. My friends, silence is not cowardice. It's not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's wisdom. It's protection. It's the invisible strike, the one that lands when they least expect it. And when it lands, it doesn't just bruise their ego, it dismantles their illusions. So don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to step back, to walk away, to disappear without a scene. Sometimes the greatest strength is not in speaking louder, but in saying nothing at all. And now, I want you to write this in the comments. I am unshaken. 3 simple words. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your silence is not emptiness. It's power. Your absence is not loss. It's liberation. And stay with me, because what comes next will show you exactly why this silence doesn't just break the cycle. It rewires the game completely. Number 2. They and control shattered. Control is nothing more than the illusion that someone else will always bend to your rhythm. My friends, that line might sting, but it's the truth. People walk around convinced they own the script of your life, as if you'll always play the same role, always deliver the same lines, always return on cue like an actor who never misses their mark. And when you do, when you've trained them to expect your patience, your effort, your devotion, that's when control feels unshakable for them. They think, no matter what I do, they'll always come back. But here's the crack in their illusion. Control only exists until silence enters the room. Because silence is the wrecking ball that smashes their script to pieces. Imagine for a second, folks, a puppet show. The puppeteer jerks the strings, makes the puppet dance, bow, smile, cry. The crowd claps, the puppeteer laughs. He believes he controls the show. But what happens when one day the strings go slack? When the puppet simply hangs there, motionless, refusing to move? Suddenly, the puppeteer looks like a fool. The audience grows restless. The show collapses, not because the puppet screamed, not because it fought back, but because it simply stopped playing along. That, right there, is what silence does. You stop dancing to their rhythm, and the entire stage crumbles. Now let's break the lie they've been living under. They think control comes from dominance, from arrogance, from holding power over you. They think their cold replies, their manipulation, their careless neglect will keep you chasing. They believe that as long as they dangle crumbs, you'll keep coming back to beg for more. But here's the truth. Control is fragile. It's not real power. It depends entirely on your response. The moment you stop reacting, the illusion disintegrates. Stoicism teaches us this simple principle. You cannot control what others do, only how you respond. And when you choose not to respond at all, that's when you take back every ounce of power you unknowingly gave away. Let me ask you this, my friends. Why do they cling so tightly to the illusion of control? Because control feels like safety. It strokes the ego. It convinces them that no matter how reckless they are, you'll always be there to pick up the pieces. It's like a gambler who keeps betting, not because they're winning, but because they believe the house will always cover their losses. But what happens when the house closes? What happens when you refuse to fund their chaos? That's when the gambler loses everything. And here's what's difficult, for you, not for them. Because silence doesn't just shatter their control, it tests yours. Your emotions will scream to react, to text back, to give in, to explain, to demand they see your worth. But every time you hold your silence, every time you resist the urge to fall back into the pattern, you're proving something monumental, not to them, but to yourself. You're proving you're no longer trapped in their script. You're proving you've outgrown their game. Let me give you a metaphor you won't forget. Imagine a chessboard. They've been playing the game for months, maybe years, always confident because they know your moves. They know you'll sacrifice your queen to save the king. They know you'll defend the pawns at all costs. But then one day, you stop moving the pieces. You fold the board. You walk away. Do you understand how maddening that is for them? Their entire sense of power depended on your willingness to play. Without you, the game isn't just over. It never mattered in the first place. That's the quiet devastation of silence. It doesn't just end the game. It exposes how meaningless the game was all along. But here's the lie they'll cling to, and maybe even the lie you've believed, that without control, they'll crumble and chase you back. Maybe they will for a while. Maybe they'll test the waters, drop hints, send signals. But remember, control wasn't about love. It was about predictability. And when you've broken the pattern, when you've shattered the certainty, they no longer know how to handle you. You've gone from predictable to unpredictable, from accessible to untouchable. And untouchable energy, my friends, is the most powerful energy of all. Think about this. When they had control, they didn't fear losing you. Why? Because they thought you'd never leave. But when silence enters, when absence is sustained, fear creeps in. The fear of losing what they thought was guaranteed. And fear eats away at arrogance faster than anything else. They go from, I can have them whenever I want, to, did I just lose them forever? That mental collapse is the hardest blow of all, because it forces them to face a reality they never prepared for, life without you. But let's be real here. It's not just about them, it's about you. Breaking free from control is as much an internal battle as it is external, because control is a two-way street. They can only control you if you let them. And if you've spent months or years stuck in the cycle, silence feels like walking through fire. But here's the paradox. The fire doesn't burn you. It cleanses you. It burns away the illusions, the lies, the need for validation. What's left is pure. What's left is strength. This is where Stoicism shines. The Stoics didn't fight battles with rage. They fought them with composure. They didn't seek revenge. They sought mastery of themselves. When you stop feeding into their cycle, when you stop explaining yourself to someone who doesn't deserve your words, you embody Stoic power. You prove that control doesn't belong to the manipulator. It belongs to the one who refuses to be manipulated. So yes, they will scramble. They'll try to provoke you. They'll test your silence. They'll bait you with their absence, with new distractions, with games meant to draw you back. But your silence is stronger than their noise. Your calm is louder than their chaos, and your refusal to play their game is the ultimate shattering of their illusion. And now, my friends, I want you to declare it. right here, right now. Type it in the comments. I broke the cycle. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that their control is over, that you're no longer their puppet, their predictable return, their safety net, because you've stepped into something stronger, you've stepped into yourself. Stay with me, because next we'll talk about what happens after the silence sets in, the mirror effect. The moment they're forced to face themselves without you as their distraction. And trust me, that's when the real unraveling begins. Number 3, they and psychological warfare without noise. War doesn't always roar with cannons and swords. Sometimes the deadliest war is fought in silence. My friends, let that sink in for a moment. Because when most people think of battles, they imagine chaos. Screams, shouting, the sound of doors slamming, the clash of words like steel on steel. They expect noise, they prepare for confrontation, but what they never prepare for is silence. Silence is the battlefield where no sound is made, yet everything is lost. It is psychological warfare at its purest, and it's the hardest blow they'll ever feel, because it leaves no wound to point at, no scar to explain, only an emptiness they cannot escape. Think of it like this. Imagine two armies facing each other on a field. One side is armed, shouting war cries, ready for the attack. They've prepared speeches in their head, excuses in their pocket, manipulations on their tongue. They are armed to the teeth with noise. But when the battle begins, the other side doesn't fight at all. They lower their weapons. They turn and walk away. No rage, no explanation, no resistance. What happens? The army left behind collapses, not because they lost the fight, but because they never got to fight at all. That, folks, is the power of silence. It denies the ego the very thing it craves most, reaction. You see, reaction is fuel. It's oxygen to the fire of manipulation. As long as you react, as long as you explain, as long as you justify, they still feel powerful. They still believe they're in control. But silence starves the fire. No matter how hard they try to ignite it again, through games, through mixed signals, through subtle provocations, your silence smothers every spark. And soon, the flames that once consumed you flicker out, leaving them cold, alone, and terrified. That's not just absence, that's strategy, that's psychological warfare. But here's where it cuts even deeper. When you scream, they can scream back. When you accuse, they can deny. When you argue, they can twist. But when you go silent, there's nothing for them to fight. No battlefield, no opponent, no enemy. And in that void, their mind becomes their own worst enemy. They start asking themselves questions they can't answer. Did I push too far? Are they really gone? Did I just lose the one who always came back? And the more they try to silence those questions, the louder they get. That's the torture of silence. It doesn't just end the fight, it makes them fight themselves. Let's break the lie they've believed. They think power comes from speaking louder, from dominating, from making you react. They think their silence, their cold games, their ignoring you was power. But here's the truth. Ignoring isn't power if it's a tactic. Real power is silence with no motive. Real power is absence with no warning. Real power is not about punishing, it's about moving on. And when they realize your silence isn't manipulation, but conclusion, that's when the panic begins. Picture this. Someone used to having a remote control. They press a button, and the TV responds. Volume up, volume down, channel switch. They believe they control it. But then one day, they press the button, and nothing happens. They press again, harder, faster, shaking the remote, thinking maybe the batteries are dead. But the truth is, the TV isn't broken, it's unplugged. It no longer receives their signal. That's what your silence is. It's unplugging yourself from their control. No matter how many buttons they press, nothing changes. And that realization eats them alive. But let's not lie, my friends. This isn't easy for you. Silence as psychological warfare isn't just a weapon against them, it's a test for you, because your heart will want to break it. You'll feel the urge to respond, to defend, to check in, to peek back. But every time you resist, every time you remain still, you grow stronger. Every unanswered message is a training ground. Every ignored attempt is proof of your resilience. You're not playing their game anymore. You're mastering yours. And the ego on their side, it hates this, because silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is poison to control. Before they knew exactly how to manipulate you, they knew what words would trigger you, what absence would draw you back, what mixed signal would keep you chasing. But now, nothing works. Their tricks bounce off the wall of your silence like arrows hitting stone. And the more they realize you're not reacting, the more desperate they become. That desperation, my friends, is the sound of control slipping away. Let me give you another metaphor. Imagine they're a magician on stage. They've been performing tricks for years, pulling rabbits out of hats, making coins disappear, dazzling the crowd with illusions. And you've always been in the front row, clapping, amazed, buying into the show. But one day, you stop reacting, you stop clapping, you stop watching, you leave the theater altogether. Suddenly, the magician isn't magical anymore. Without an audience, without your belief, they're just a person with cheap props and no power. That's what silence does. It removes the illusion, and without you feeding into it, they're exposed. And here's the most brutal part. Silence doesn't just deny them control, it rewrites the story. Because now they're no longer the one who left, the one who ignored, the one who played cold. Now they're the one waiting. They're the one wondering. They're the one searching for answers. The roles reverse and the psychological weight shifts. Before, you were the one suffering in their silence. Now, they're the one suffocating in yours. So why is this the hardest blow? Because it's not just about losing you, it's about losing the illusion of power. They thought they had you figured out. They thought you were predictable. They thought they could always push and pull you at will. But your silence destroys that blueprint. You've become a mystery. And mystery, my friends, is addictive. The human mind cannot tolerate a puzzle without a solution. And when your silence offers no solution, no closure, no ending, it becomes torture. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But what if they move on? What if my silence doesn't bother them at all? That's the fear speaking, not the truth. Because here's the reality. People may distract themselves, but distraction isn't healing. They may pretend your absence doesn't matter, but pretending isn't forgetting. The silence you've created doesn't vanish. It lingers like an echo. It follows them into their quiet moments. It haunts them in the spaces where they once expected you to be. And no new distraction can erase that. So don't be fooled into thinking silence is nothing. Silence is everything. It's the unsent message that speaks louder than 1,000 texts. It's the unanswered call that screams louder than an argument. It's the absence that weighs heavier than presence. Silence is not passive, it's decisive. It's not cowardice, it's courage. It's not avoidance, it's mastery. And my friends, this is where your strength shines. Because while they're unraveling in confusion, you're reconstructing in peace. While they're tortured by questions, you're freed by answers. While they're trapped in the war of their own mind, you've already won by refusing to fight. That's what silence does. It turns the battlefield into a graveyard, not for you, but for their illusion of control. Now, I want you to declare this in the comments. I am the silence. Say it with conviction. Show them, show yourself, show the world that your silence is not emptiness, it's warfare, it's wisdom, it's freedom. And stay with me, because what comes next is even more devastating, the collapse of certainty. The moment when silence doesn't just unsettle them, it dismantles the entire foundation they once stood on. And that, my friends, is the blow that leaves no way back. Number 4. They and the collapse of certainty. Certainty is the pillow the arrogant rest on, until silence pulls it out from under them. My friends, that line carries more truth than most people are ready to admit. Certainty is what keeps people reckless. It's what makes them careless with you, dismissive of your efforts, blind to the damage they cause. They think you'll always be there. They think no matter what they say, no matter how they treat you, you'll return. Certainty is their comfort zone. And the moment silence steps in, that comfort zone collapses. And when certainty collapses, the entire world inside their head comes crashing down with it. Imagine this with me for a moment. Picture someone walking across a frozen lake. They walk with confidence because they trust the ice will always hold. They don't tiptoe, they don't watch their step. They just move freely, arrogantly, like nothing can touch them. But then one day, the ice starts to crack. A sound beneath their feet, a shift they didn't expect. Suddenly, every step feels dangerous. Every move becomes a question. That's what silence does to them. It takes the certainty they once walked on and replaces it with cracks, with doubt, with fear. And once that certainty is gone, nothing feels safe anymore. Here's the lie they believed. They thought your love was unconditional, your patience infinite, your presence guaranteed. They thought no matter how many times they pushed you away, you'd always return. And to be fair, maybe in the past you did. Maybe you forgave. Maybe you explained. Maybe you carried the weight they should have carried. But silence ends all of that. Silence is the shift beneath the ice. It says, not anymore. Not this time. Not ever again. And that realization doesn't hit them all at once. It seeps in slowly, gnawing at them, until their arrogance crumbles into desperation. Think of how much of their control came from predictability. You always replied. You always explained. You always gave in. That predictability was their anchor. But when you stop, when you go silent, the anchor disappears. Suddenly, they're adrift in open water with no map, no compass, no direction. And the human mind hates uncertainty more than anything. The brain will do anything to avoid it, make excuses, invent lies, cling to false hope. But none of it works when the silence is consistent. The uncertainty only grows. Let's be real, my friends. Certainty is addictive. It's like a drug. And they were addicted to the certainty of you. They built their entire emotional structure around it. You were their fallback. You were their guaranteed validation. Even if they ignored you, even if they played with your heart, deep down they thought, they'll be back. They always come back. But when you don't, when silence replaces the old cycle, their structure doesn't just shake, it collapses. The house of arrogance they built on your patience comes crashing down. Here's the terrifying part, for them, not for you. Because once certainty is gone, every moment becomes torture. They wake up wondering if today will be the day you break the silence. They check their phone for a message that never comes. They stalk your presence, looking for signs, only to find nothing. The silence starts to echo. And that echo is louder than any words you could have spoken. Because silence doesn't just create uncertainty, it sustains it. And sustained uncertainty is unbearable. Think of a gambler again. They pull the lever on a slot machine, convinced the next spin will pay off. They keep pulling, keep betting, because the certainty of possibility drives them. But when the machine stops working entirely, when no matter how many coins they drop, the lever won't move, panic sets in. That's exactly what silence does. They keep trying to pull the lever, to provoke a reaction, to draw you back. But the machine is broken, and eventually they realize the game is over. That realization doesn't just hurt, it destroys. Here's another metaphor for you. Picture a lighthouse on a stormy night. For years, sailors have relied on its light to guide them. They grew certain of it. They took it for granted. They assumed, no matter what, the light would always be there. But then, one night, the light goes out. The sea is still raging, the storms are still there, but now there's no beacon. The sailors panic, they crash. That's what happens when your presence, your guidance, your constant availability suddenly disappears. They lose their way. Because the certainty they built their arrogance on is gone, and without it, they're lost. Let's break another lie, my friends. They may try to act like they don't care. They may put on a mask, pretend your absence doesn't bother them. But masks are cheap. Silence doesn't just crack them, it rips them off completely. Because no one is immune to uncertainty. Even the strongest ego crumbles when faced with doubt it can't answer. And when they can't predict you anymore, when they can't control the outcome, that's when fear sets in. Fear that you're gone for good. Fear that they've lost something irreplaceable. Fear that their certainty was a delusion all along. Now here's the powerful part for you. Because while their certainty is collapsing, your strength is rising. Silence isn't just a weapon you use against them, it's a shield you build for yourself. Every day you remain silent, every day you resist the temptation to break the cycle, you're proving something vital. You're proving that you no longer need their certainty to survive. You're building your own. And that certainty, the certainty in yourself, in your worth, in your peace, is unshakable. Let me give you a quote to hold on to. You will never be free until you free yourself from the prison of other people's expectations. That's what silence does. It frees you. It cuts the strings of certainty they had wrapped around you. It shows you that you don't need their approval, their validation, their presence to feel whole. And once you taste that freedom, once you build your own certainty, there's no going back. So when they're crumbling in the collapse of their certainty, when they're scrambling to understand why the old patterns no longer work, remember this. You are not their anchor anymore. You are not their lighthouse, their slot machine, their frozen lake. You've stepped out of their game entirely, and the hardest blow they'll ever feel is realizing that the person they thought was permanent has become unreachable. Now, my friends, I want you to declare it in the comments. I am unshakable. Say it with conviction. Show them, show yourself, show the world that their certainty is gone and yours has begun. Because while their world collapses under the weight of silence, yours is being rebuilt on the foundation of self-respect and peace. And stay with me, because what comes next is even more powerful. We'll dive into how your absence doesn't just collapse their certainty. It transforms into your fortress, your boundary, your ultimate protection. And that, my friends, is the kind of power no one can ever take from you again. Number 5. They and from absence to power. Sometimes the strongest walls are built out of nothing but silence. My friends, take that in for a moment. Absence, something that seems so empty, so invisible, can become the most powerful fortress you will ever create. Because absence, when chosen with clarity, is not weakness, it's not avoidance, it's transformation. It's you stepping out of their control and stepping fully into your own power. And when they finally feel that absence, when they realize you are no longer reacting, no longer explaining, no longer bending, that's when the game changes forever. Let's start with a metaphor. Imagine a castle that's been raided over and over again. The gates have been left open, the guards distracted, the walls weak. Enemies come and go, taking what they please. That castle is your heart when you gave endless access, when you explained yourself to people who never listened, when you kept forgiving those who never changed. But one day you decide enough is enough. You close the gates, you fortify the walls, you build something unshakable, and suddenly the invaders can no longer enter. That's what absence does. It's not just walking away, it's building a fortress around your peace. Here's the lie they believed, that your absence would hurt you more than it hurt them. They thought you would crumble without them. They thought you needed their presence more than they needed yours. But what they didn't count on is that absence, when sustained, doesn't just protect you, it empowers you. Because absence isn't about running from them, it's about returning to yourself. Every second you remain absent, you're reclaiming pieces of yourself you lost. Every silent day is proof that you no longer hand out access to your soul so cheaply. Now let's ask the question, why is absence so terrifying for them? Because absence flips the power dynamic. Before, they had the power of expectation. They expected you to reply. They expected you to come back. They expected your devotion to continue no matter how they treated you. That expectation was their comfort, their arrogance, their illusion of control. But when you stop showing up, when you stop reacting, when you disappear with dignity, their expectation shatters. And when expectation shatters, fear takes its place. They fear you've outgrown them. They fear they've lost you. They fear the door they assumed was always open has been locked, permanently. Think of absence as an impenetrable shield. Words can be twisted, emotions can be manipulated, but silence. Silence can't be argued with. Silence can't be negotiated. Silence doesn't budge. And the longer you hold it, the stronger it becomes. They can shout. They can bait, they can throw distractions at you, but your absence stands still, untouchable, unshakable, immovable. That's power, my friends, the kind of power that can't be faked because it's rooted in discipline. But let's be real, it won't feel like power at first. In the beginning, absence feels like emptiness. It feels like a void you want to fill. You'll feel the urge to break it, to send that one last text, to check if they notice. That's your old conditioning speaking, the part of you that was trained to equate reaction with connection. But here's the truth. Connection built on manipulation isn't connection, it's control. And absence is what breaks that control. Every time you resist the urge to break the silence, you're not just avoiding them, you're strengthening yourself. You're proving that you don't need their attention to feel whole. Remember this, he who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior. That's the essence of Stoicism. Power doesn't come from dominating others, it comes from mastering yourself. And when you can master your silence, when you can sit with your absence without running back, you've conquered one of the hardest battles you'll ever face. That's when absence transforms from something that feels like loss into something that feels like liberation. Now let me paint you another picture. Imagine a fire. For years, you've been the wood, the fuel, the oxygen that kept it burning. They depended on you for heat, for light, for survival. But one day, you stop feeding the fire. At first, the flames roar, trying to consume whatever is left. But slowly, surely, the fire begins to shrink. The light fades. The warmth dies out. Until nothing is left but ashes. That's what absence does. It starves their arrogance, their manipulation, their control. And when the fire dies, they're left in the cold, realizing just how much of their power came from your energy in the first place. And while they're freezing in the cold of their own emptiness, you're growing warmer in the light of your own power. Because absence doesn't just protect you from them, it creates space for you to rebuild. It gives you back your time, your energy, your focus. It allows you to sleep better, breathe deeper, think clearer. The absence that once felt like pain becomes a shelter, a safe space where no one else's chaos can reach you. And within that shelter, something incredible happens. You begin to recognize your own worth again. Here's the hardest truth they'll never admit. Your absence teaches them more than your presence ever did. When you were there, they didn't listen. When you explained, they didn't hear. When you gave, they didn't value. But your absence, it speaks volumes. It teaches them the lesson they refused to learn while you were around, that your presence was a gift, not a guarantee, that your energy was priceless, not replaceable. And when they realize that lesson, it's too late. Because absence is not a pause button. It's not a break. It's not waiting for them to change. It's the final curtain. And this is where you find your ultimate power, not in their regret, not in their confusion, but in your clarity. Absence shows you that you don't need to fight for attention, you don't need to beg for love, you don't need to justify your existence. You are enough, with or without their recognition. Your absence becomes your declaration. I will no longer sacrifice my peace for your chaos. And that declaration, even in silence, is the loudest message you'll ever send. My friends, here's the affirmation I want you to write in the comments right now. My absence is my power. Write it, show it, declare it. Because the moment you own your absence, the moment you wear your silence as a crown instead of a wound, you've won. You've broken the cycle. You've shattered the illusion. You've built a fortress no one can penetrate. And stay with me, because what comes next will take this even further. We'll talk about how absence isn't just power, it's transformation. It's the beginning of your reconstruction, the rebirth of a version of you that doesn't just survive without them, but thrives beyond them. That's where the real story begins. That's where the silence stops being a shield and starts becoming your freedom. And that, my friends, is when they finally understand the hardest blow wasn't losing you. It was realizing they'll never have access to you again. Number 6. They and the reconstruction. What looks like emptiness to them is actually the foundation of your rebirth. My friends, remember this line. Because when you step into silence, when you embrace absence, they see only a void. They think you've disappeared, they think you're broken, they think you're lost. But what they don't realize is that within that silence, something powerful is happening. You are rebuilding, you are reconstructing, you are becoming someone stronger, calmer, wiser than they ever imagined. Silence doesn't mean the end, it means the beginning. Picture this. A forest fire sweeps through acres of land, devouring everything in its path. From the outside, it looks like destruction, ashes, emptiness, a wasteland where life used to thrive. But what happens after a fire? Slowly, new growth begins. Green shoots push through the soil stronger than before. The forest reconstructs itself, not weaker, but more resilient. That's you, my friends. Your silence may look like loss from the outside, but inside, it's growth. You're regrowing the parts of yourself you abandoned. You're reconstructing the self-worth you once handed over. You're rebuilding the fortress of your peace brick by brick, day by day. And here's the lie we need to break. They believe your silence is weakness. They tell themselves you're quiet because you don't know what to say, because you're still hurting, because you can't fight back. But here's the truth, they couldn't be more wrong. Silence isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's the refusal to waste one more ounce of energy on what doesn't serve you. It's the choice to rebuild instead of react. And the longer you hold that silence, the more they realize the truth. They didn't silence you. You silence them. Now let's talk about the questions that creep in during your reconstruction. You'll ask yourself, am I really doing the right thing? Should I have said more? Should I have fought harder? These questions are natural, but they're rooted in old wounds. The urge to explain yourself, to prove your worth, comes from the part of you that once needed their approval. But silence is teaching you something new. You don't need to be understood to heal. You don't need closure from them to close the chapter. You don't need their recognition to rebuild your life. Think of silence like clearing out an old house. At first, it's overwhelming. Dust everywhere, broken furniture, clutter from years of neglect. But as you clear one room at a time, space begins to open. Light comes in. The house starts to feel like home again. That's what reconstruction looks like inside you. Every time you resist the urge to run back, you clear another room. Every time you choose peace over drama, you open another window. Slowly, the chaos fades, and your soul becomes a place you actually want to live in again. This is why absence is so powerful. It creates space. When you are caught in their control, You had no space. Your thoughts were consumed by them, your energy drained by their games, your peace stolen by their inconsistency. But silence gives you that space back, and in that space, you begin to notice things you missed before. You start taking care of your body again. You sleep better. You laugh more. You pick up hobbies you abandoned. You invest in friendships you neglected. Piece by piece, you reconstruct the life that was put on hold while you were trapped in their cycle. And let me tell you something that might shock you. The silence that tortures them is the same silence that heals you. While they spiral in confusion, you rise in clarity. While they feel lost without your presence, you find yourself in your absence. That's the paradox they never saw coming. The very weapon they once used, ignoring you, discarding you, becomes the tool you use to rebuild. Except now, it's not a tactic. It's not manipulation. It's maturity. It's wisdom. It's power. Let's bring in another metaphor. Think of a sculptor with a block of marble. At first, it's just a heavy, shapeless stone. But through patience, through precision, through the removal of everything that doesn't belong, a masterpiece emerges. That's what silence does for you. Every day of absence is another chip off the marble. You're sculpting a new version of yourself, not the one they belittled, not the one they took for granted, but the one who finally knows their worth. And when that version of you stands fully formed, they won't even recognize you anymore. Here's another truth. They will notice. Oh, they may not admit it, but they will. They'll notice the glow in your eyes when you no longer look their way. They'll notice the peace in your energy when you no longer chase. They'll notice the strength in your silence when their noise no longer moves you. And that realization will cut them deeper than any argument ever could. Because nothing hurts more than seeing the person you underestimated become someone you can no longer reach. But let's shift the focus back to you. Because this reconstruction isn't about them, it's about you. It's about rising from the ashes of everything they burned down. It's about choosing to rebuild stronger, wiser, more resilient than ever before. And here's the most beautiful part. Your reconstruction doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be a dramatic transformation for the world to see. It can be quiet, subtle, invisible to everyone but you. And yet its impact is undeniable. As Epictetus once said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Reconstruction is where you master yourself. It's where you stop letting your emotions be dictated by someone else's presence. It's where you stop living for their approval and start living for your peace. It's where you stop explaining and start embodying. And once you reach that place, my friends, you don't just rebuild, you transcend. So yes, silence hurts at first. It feels like loss. It feels like emptiness. But give it time and you'll see what it really is. A blank canvas. A chance to paint a life that doesn't revolve around their chaos. A chance to write a story that doesn't end with their validation. A chance to reconstruct yourself into someone unrecognizable to the person who once thought they controlled you. Now here's what I want you to do. Write this affirmation in the comments. I am rebuilding. Say it with conviction. Show them, show yourself. Show the world that your silence isn't weakness. It's reconstruction. It's the quiet power of someone who refuses to stay broken. Because while they crumble under the weight of uncertainty, you're rising on the foundation of self-respect. And stay with me, because what comes next is the final turn of the knife. We're going to talk about how silence doesn't just rebuild you, it becomes the verdict. The final judgment they can't appeal, the sentence they can't escape. That, my friends, is when the hardest blow lands, not in your loss, but in your rebirth. Number 7. They and the verdict of silence. The most powerful statement is the one you never speak. My friends, if you let that line burn inside you, you'll realize it carries a truth sharper than any sword, louder than any shout. Because words, no matter how heavy, no matter how cutting, always leave room for a reply. But silence? Silence is final. Silence is the verdict. And once it's given, there is no appeal, no negotiation, no second chance. It is the judgment they never expected, the sentence they can't escape, and the hardest blow they will ever feel. Think of a courtroom. The defendant is ready, armed with excuses, rehearsed speeches, maybe even fake tears. They're expecting the prosecutor to attack, the jury to deliberate, the judge to speak. They're prepared for noise. But then the judge doesn't argue. The judge doesn't explain. The judge simply delivers the sentence and walks away. That silence after the gavel drops, that is the true punishment. And that's exactly what happens when you choose absence. You don't argue your worth. You don't plead your case. You simply deliver the verdict with your silence. Here's the lie they believed, that the ending would be theirs to control, that they'd get the last word, the final say, the power to close the chapter on their terms. But your silence shattered that illusion. Because silence is not theirs, it's yours. And when you hold it with dignity, when you refuse to give them a final scene, you take away the very thing they craved most: control. They thought they were untouchable, but the verdict of your absence makes it clear they were never in control. You were. Let me paint you a metaphor. Imagine a boxer who has been training for months, convinced the fight will be their victory lap. They step into the ring, bouncing with confidence, waiting for the bell. But when the bell rings, their opponent doesn't move. Their opponent doesn't fight. Their opponent simply steps out of the ring and walks away. The boxer stands there, fists raised, ready to strike, but there's no one left to fight. The crowd goes silent. The victory they expected never comes. That's what silence does. It denies them the ending they rehearsed. It denies them the comfort of closure. It denies them the certainty of control. And my friends, let's not pretend this doesn't hurt them deeply, because people are not tortured by endings. They are tortured by the lack of them. Closure gives them relief, even if it's painful. It gives them a box to put you in, a story to tell themselves, a way to move on. But silence? Silence leaves them suspended, hanging in the void, replaying the past, searching for answers that will never come. It's not just an absence, it's an open wound that never closes. Now let's talk about why silence is so difficult for them to face. Because silence is a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. When you argue, they can deflect. When you explain, they can twist. When you cry, they can dismiss. But silence offers no distraction, no noise, no escape. It forces them to see themselves clearly. And what they see is brutal. They see how much of the connection depended on you. They see how reckless they were with your devotion. They see how fragile their arrogance really was. And they see, maybe for the first time, that they were never as in control as they believed. As Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's what silence proves. It proves that you've taken back your power. It proves that you no longer react to their games. It proves that you've risen above their chaos. And once you realize this, silence stops being difficult. It stops feeling like a burden. It becomes your shield, your fortress, your crown. Think of silence as a locked door. On the other side, they are pounding, shouting, begging, trying every key they once used: manipulation, guilt, anger, charm. But nothing opens it, because this door isn't locked with a key, it's sealed with a decision. And once that decision is made, once you choose your peace over their presence, there's no going back. They can scream all they want, but silence answers louder than any words. Here's the irony they'll never admit. The one who once ignored you now suffers the most from being ignored. The one who once discarded you now feels discarded. The one who once controlled the cycle now collapses under the weight of your absence. And this is why silence is the verdict, because it flips the roles entirely. They are now the ones searching, wondering, hurting. And you've already moved on. But let me bring the focus back to you, because this is where the reconstruction becomes triumph. Silence is not about punishing them, it's about protecting you. It's about proving to yourself that your peace matters more than their chaos. It's about choosing not to waste your life trying to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. It's about walking away not in anger, but in wisdom. Because real maturity isn't in how loudly you can scream, it's in how calmly you can walk away. And yes, it's hard at first. Your mind will want to fill the silence with noise. You'll want to check if they noticed, if they regret, if they miss you. But every time you resist, every time you stay silent, you're building muscle. You're training your soul to thrive without their validation. And soon, the silence that once felt heavy becomes light. It becomes peace. It becomes freedom. So here's the affirmation I want you to hold on to. My silence is my verdict. Write it in the comments right now. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that you're no longer explaining, no longer chasing, no longer begging. You're deciding. You're closing the door with dignity. And that verdict, your silence, will echo louder than any goodbye ever could. And if this resonated with you, if you felt the weight of what silence really means, then stay with me. Because this journey of Stoic power is just beginning. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this message with someone who needs it. Because the world is full of noise, but here we're learning the art of silence. And in silence, my friends, is where true power lives.